back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your hosts, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we go south of the border, but we're in America. We're going to explain what all that means here momentarily, but happy Cinco de Mayo. Enjoy responsibly today and sit back and buckle into the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Scott, how are you, sir? I missed you on the last podcast. Glad to have you back.
I'm back in the prime.
You are. You've made it back from D.C., the land of politicians, and decided to have a nice whiskey with me tonight.
Yeah, 4 days in D.C. was more than enough for me.
I'm sure. 2 days in D.C. was enough for me, and that was it. So
yeah,
I get it.
Yeah. Well, I made the conscious decision to stay an extra day, but it didn't really amount to anything productive. So whatever.
Hey, I mean, come on, you gotta see what's going on. I mean, there's a lot happening in DC right now.
A lot of sports going on in DC. So there was playoff hockey and baseball seasons obviously kicked off, and both of them were going on when I was there, but I didn't make it over to either stadium or arena. But yeah. I did look up ticket prices. They are insane.
Oh, I mean, it's nuts. Absolutely crazy what is happening with the price of sports tickets just everywhere. I can remember grabbing, tickets to a Dodgers game, third baseline, 10 years ago, and it was $100. Like, steal of great, but can't do that anymore.
No, it was ridiculous. A single seat to the Capitals game. Now they're dealing with like Ovechkin hitting the record, and every goal is a new record at this point. So the single seat ticket in the third level was $440, $430, something like that.
Yeah,
I saw that and I was just like, nope, not going.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, you got to think about it. That man has, chased down one of the hardest, records of all time. It was like no one thought anyone would pass Kareem's, points scored in basketball. The real one, I think, is, will anyone break Pete Rose's hit record? Probably not. That's a lot of hits over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these records are made to fall, but some of them are just astronomical.
Yeah. I didn't think I would see it, but I mean, it stood for 20 years, 25 years, I think. So
there's always going to be someone bigger, faster, and stronger. That's as an athlete, former athlete, that's all I can always say is there's always the next person. Will they live up to it? That's up to them, but bigger, stronger, and faster is super important. It's the fastest 2 minutes in sports this weekend, as well as Kentucky Derby is in full swing here in Louisville, Kentucky. You're talking about prices. Oh boy. If you want to go to the Derby anymore, bring your checkbook because
go Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, because Derby is now, not nearly as local as it was. We now have Wednesday. That's the day we're headed to the track. You have obviously Oaks and Derby. Forecast doesn't look super positive over the next 4 days. It looks great for Derby Day. Does not look awesome up until then. So, we'll see. It's early May, late April. Anything can happen in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's spring in Kentucky. As long as it's not snowing, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, there's always umbrellas for this. So super excited about that. The post drawing was last Saturday night. Didn't pay attention to it. I will do my research probably Wednesday at the track to place a bet for Saturday. But super excited about doing all the Derby festivities. But one of my favorite things is Mexican food and tequila. I've been really getting into tequila, and so we're going to celebrate that by looking at the celebration, the marriage, the partnership of this beautifully Mexican spirit, tequila and bourbon and rye whiskey. We've seen a variety of new releases coming both ways, right? Aged tequila casks in, Tequila Ocho did the Old Fitzgerald barrels, or we've seen Corazon do it in the BTAC collection. And now we're seeing it vice versa with Blood Oath, has the El Mayor extra añejo, Angel's Envy with the Patron extra añejo. We've got Woodinville. Those are the three bourbons and whiskeys we got tonight that we're going to chat about just a little bit. But man, what do you think about this tequila bourbon evolution thing that we got going on?
I find it very interesting. I never thought that it would kick off. I mean, usually when you talk to a bourbon drinker, they're like, oh no, I don't drink tequila. That's I don't venture down that path because everybody's got their bad tequila story. Everybody's got their bad whiskey story too, but it just seemed like those worlds colliding. I didn't think it would really stick. But it seems like it's timely. The rise in tequila and obviously the excess of tequila cask that are probably on the market for barrel brokers to, sling some samples out and show people what tequila is all about. And, I find it very interesting. Always willing to explore different cask finishes. So I think that since a lot of the crazy cask finishes have kind of faded, like the maple, the honey, the every type of wine you ever never heard of, like those have kind of slowed down a little bit. So now it's the next big thing, I guess.
Well, and you got to think about it. Whiskey supports tequila, really same way that it does with rum, right? You would think we'd see more rum and tequila finishes just with the sheer amount of barrels heading south, or rum, in other countries as well. So that's a very interesting thing to me. The other thing is it's so weird because most whiskey drinkers don't enjoy clear spirits. You are probably one of the exceptions with being a gin drinker. But most whiskey drinkers are like, I want that age that influence the vanillins, the tannins, and they don't have appreciation for the stripped down, experience of a non-additive Blanco tequila, or a non-additive gin, or, we've got this whole new influencer thing around Blue Weber agave vodka right now, that I feel like is everywhere.
Yeah. Whatever that is. I don't know what difference, what makes it vodka versus tequila or agave spirit. I don't really know.
Yeah. So that's a whole interesting thing we got going on. But, this is really interesting because recently I hadn't really partaken in a lot of Blanco tequila. I have enjoyed the aged experience, the añejo, the reposado, because I like that barrel characteristic. Well, a brand sends us something, Pardita sends us something, and I was like, oh, let's try the Blanco. Let's make a margarita, but let's try it neat. I prefer tequila chilled. That's one thing I have learned. If I'm going to sip it, I like it on a rock, where bourbon I like neat. So I think that's a really interesting thing. But, a good tequila should be very simple and subtle. And it shouldn't have all these swings in flavor, because it should be a very clean spirit. So that's what I found really interesting about tequila as I started to explore it, is clean, easy sip. And as John Rimpey told us in the latest podcast, it should just be, you're going to get some sweetness, almost like a sweet potato type note. And you're going to get a little bit of peppery spice, and you're going to get like that agave maple syrupy type of, flavor. Other than that, it should be pretty simple. So that's what I found really interesting about, exploring the clear spirit of it all.
Yeah. So the unaged or Blanco. But I learned something new in our latest podcast that you did about añejo, extra añejo, reposado, like what those terms meant. I didn't, before that, I was like, no clue what, other than añejo, I knew meant that it had spent time in a barrel because it comes out a paler yellow color.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, aged and then rested. I was like, okay.
Rested, yes.
Makes a lot of sense. So, I think that it's interesting because that clean spirit can pick up some of those barrel influence vanillas, what I would call rounds out the palate, which I think is the intention.
Yep.
But tequila today, the additive free, the cleaner spirit is a totally miles apart from the tequila that of yesteryear, where you just were taking shots of that and had to have salt and lime and everything else,
This isn't Montezuma, right? This is a whole revelation of tequila. And I find it very interesting because Rempe talked about something really in particular is the agave spirit can overwhelm bourbon as well because of its sharp peppery note that is kind of known with a lot of tequilas. And he said he's tried this, off air. We talked about it a little bit more. He tried this for about 6 or 7 years to try to make the right blend. So I think it's very interesting that, it took somebody who is master at their craft to blend this the appropriate way, and someone who's actually worked in the tequila industry like John had, to dial that in. I found really interesting overall. So, I'm excited for you to get to try Blood Oath Pact 11. You haven't had it yet before tonight. And then I've not tried the Angel's Envy or the Woodinville. So we're going to give some quick thoughts on this. But if you were to pick one off a shelf, right? If one of them were to like kind of jump out and bite you and say, you want to grab this one first, which one would you just kind of gravitate towards? Just kind of reading the press release. Which one would you pick up first?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably go with the Blood Oath because like that series historically has been pretty like top notch. Yes, it's a little bit higher dollar. But in terms of like a limited release from, decent size manufacturer, Luxro is now growing and a part of a bigger conglomerate, but that would probably be the one that I would be like, okay, this one's probably not taking as big a risk as some others. I can't think of some other tequila finishes. I think there was a Canadian whiskey that I had tried at one point.
Or not Bear Fight, it's Bareface.
Bareface. But I couldn't remember if that was a tequila finish or if it had tequila in it, because Canadian whiskey does have some allowances for additional spirits within a certain percentage.
But speaking of Bear Fight has the Kentucky bourbon finished in Reposado barrels as well.
Damn, that's it. So there's Bareface, Bear Fight. Yep. Okay. So, but that was a Kentucky whiskey or was that a Kentucky bourbon?
Kentucky bourbon.
Okay. So yeah, I think in terms of like exploring, I don't think that any have been so far out there where you think you're just drinking like bourbon flavored tequila. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that any of them have that much influence because bourbon's going to be the big note, right?
Yep.
Bourbon's going to stand up and then you're going to accentuate with the lighter spirit.
100%. And that's what I found very interesting about the Angel's Envy release, because I couldn't think of any rye finished in tequila off the top of my head. In that traditional 95.5 that they use with a really well-known tequila manufacturer in Patron, right? That's part of the Bacardi group. I was thinking about the elevation, right, of what that is, right? They're going to put a elevated aged rye whiskey in that. So what do I know about that? It's going to have a lot of citrus. It's going to have a little bit of baking spice, vanilla, the basics for a 95.5. And that's going to balance out with this probably lime wedge, a sweetness from the agave and some peppery notes. I feel like that one was really interesting to me because it was like, can you elevate it, right? It was almost like instead of using triple sec, use Grand Marnier or Cointreau, right? Like that's in my mind. It was like, I'm going to take my margarita and elevate it a little bit. That's what that one seemed like to me, because of the flavor profiles matching so much, I think, in 95.5 rye and tequila.
And that's also your preference for
base spirit,
the rye, which I'm not averse to as much as I used to be.
I mean, we've drunk enough of them at this point.
But yeah, it's that spice characteristic of the rye with those citrus notes of the 95.5 rye, and then you've got usually citrus from tequila, and then the spice, the underlying like herbally spice notes.
For sure. And I'm be honest with you, I've sipped the Blood Oath Pact 11. I'm on the Angel's Envy. And what I'll say about both of them, kudos to John, kudos to Owen. We've gotten to interview both of them this year. They really complement the base spirit well. Like the base spirit is still the star of the show, but you get the tequila influence. That's how finishes should be in my book, right? You should be able to tell that it's finished, but the finish should not be the star of the show. It's going to give you different components. And so like the peppery note that's on rye, definitely to try really like that both of them. The real kind of kicker in this is 100% pot still Woodinville, Washington State whiskey in tequila casks. So this one was one that showed up on your doorstep. I don't know as much about it as you do. And I don't know if you know much about it.
No, this is the fun part, right? So, as luck would have it, the press release just hit our inbox, maybe 2 hours ago. It's like, perfect. This is going to work out well. We're going to learn on the fly. So yeah, it's a straight bourbon, finished in an añejo tequila. It's a limited release, as these other two are, but being that it's Woodinville, limited really does mean limited. I think it said 2,000 bottles, fewer than 2,000 bottles. So way more limited. But it's hitting today, Cinco de Mayo. So they were also thinking like we were, in recording this episode, but 100 proof, 6 years. And it's the value of the three.
Oh, for sure.
$70, for a small craft distillery that's 6 years old. So
yeah. I mean, it probably could have been bonded, at some point, right? Like the base spirit could have been a bonded spirit. They're known for a good bottled and bond bourbon out there. What I appreciate just kind of off the cuff on this one is blended differently. This one is blended where you do get more tequila influence, I think, on this one from a nose palate perspective. But the bourbon is definitely still there. This is your bourbon Rita opportunity here, where you could substitute the spirit out, I think, and you'd still get all the flavors of the tequila balanced with the bourbon, where the other one's bourbon rye still main characteristic. But I really like that.
Yeah. So they have the port finished rye, which I think is probably one of their most popular. And I think I've had one other. But yeah, it's...
My dad got me a single barrel in Alabama.
There you go.
That's like... And it's good. I mean, I really enjoy it, but enjoyed it. It's gone.
So on this one, and I don't know if it's like the pot still or what, but I feel like the mouthfeel is so much more like rich.
Yeah.
I get a lot more like spice on the other two.
Yep.
One being the rye whiskey and the other has rye and a wheat bourbon blend.
Yep.
But this one has like a lot more like sweetness, but it does have that tequila influence more on the nose than the other two. So like, I've said it for a long time. I like a finished whiskey that I could mistake for a non-finished whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I would almost mistake it for not being finished on the palate, but not on the nose. Like the nose, I get a lot more like agave influence.
Mm-hmm.
But on the palate, the sweetness just stands up, and I'm not sure. Maybe that's some tequila speaking to me, or maybe it's the higher corn content.
Well,
I don't know.
I really like the salinity on the palate. It's like a salted caramel kind of partnership. If I were to take you to Scotland a little bit, I think this would be, some Highland Scotch, where you're getting a little bit of that ocean spray on the barrels. And I get that a little bit with some of those scotches from that area, or any coastal deal. This actually kind of reminds me of an old Pulteney that they did in Pinot de Charente barrels. It had that salinity, caramel, peppery note to it, which is really interesting. But I think it's got so much fat content from being pot stilled that those oils are just kind of like overwhelming the senses in my palate, which I enjoy. Like, this is a really well put together whiskey.
Yeah. So like now that my second large sip, I do get a little bit more of that tequila back end. like that peppery back end.
Yep.
But I get a lot of like nuttiness. Like it's almost like burnt sugars, nutty caramel. Like, I don't know. This one's a wild ride.
It's the most diverse of the three, I would say.
Yeah.
But you know what I would say?
I got a little bit more here.
Yeah, you got a whole bottle full. You know, what I appreciate about these all is they are nuanced. They're all a little bit different. If you have a tequila fan, I feel like a tequila fan could be a fan of all three of these. And so, you know, it'd be really interesting to call up our boy, Steve Coombs, Mr. Word Chew himself. He's a big tequila guy and get his thoughts on these. So Steve, I'm putting out the bat, the tequila drinker, Wayne, right? He's a really big tequila fan, like what he thinks of these. I just don't know enough about the base spirit. And that leads me to an issue with most finishes.
Oh God.
Yeah.
What the hell did you say? Pinot de Charente? What the sounds French.
Yeah, peanut. Yeah, like, but that means I have to go hunt something different to try at a restaurant because I'm not going to go buy a Pinot de Charente. Like wine, I think it's a wine. I think it's a fortified wine. I've not even tried it, but I know I like Pinot de Charente finishes because I just like what it gives. But you know, it's like all these crazy finishes. Lux Road just did one with a barrel that starts with an A. I have no clue how it's spelled. But you know, you get these finishes and you're like, man, I just wish I knew the base spirit. At least here, Blanco tequila, if done right, additive free, you know, gone through its process, known all these, you know, history lessons to it, it should be a good spirit, right? You know what I mean? That's what I need to do a little bit of homework on. But the good thing is it's readily available. I don't have to go hunting it.
But even like a little bit of age, like going from Blanco to Añejo, like even that little bit of age just changes the character of it so much. I'm sitting here sniffing the Tequila Ocho Old Fitzgerald, and it's bright. It's super bright, like orange peel, like boom, just hit you in the nose.
So shout out to our off hours with Bourbon Lens podcast. This is old school here. We had Salento tequila on, organic tequila, 100% blue agave or agave azul, as the Spanish speaking people would say. You know, it's all about R&D, right? And there's no time like the present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now is the time.
It's just, I want to like base distillate, right? Because this is the beginning of bourbon with a different, you know, bourbon's made the same process. Like, but
well, it's grain versus, you know, what is the sugar content, right? It's grain versus agave. Most people don't even know what an agave plant looks like. So
it's huge.
It's a big frickin' succulent. But harvesting agave is just incredible. That blade, like, wouldn't you love to have one of those in the garden?
Oh, I would have loved it when I was hacking weeds today.
I would have loved it like zombie apocalypse comes. Like, I'm not going to Mexico because those, if they've got those down there, like, they're the winners.
You go. Like that, they've just taken everybody's heads off.
That thing is a razor blade that's a foot wide.
But it's like, I'm nosing this, and like bourbon, you go for these like deep, complex thoughts, right? This is just so upfront. You can tell it's clean. You can tell it doesn't have a lot of extra stuff in it. And so, you know, it's always good to do your homework, right? I feel like that's what I've learned in the last 5 minutes, really, as I've thought about this, is I got to try more base spirits to know what the actual end result is.
Well, it's kind of like why I like gin, right? I don't typically sip it neat. It's on ice or with, a lime wedge or a little bit of tonic or club soda or something. So it's almost like what we do with our bourbon. You add a splash of water, and it opens it up, and then you get more fragrant, floral, botanical notes. Like with Añejo tequila or Blanco, it's like add an ice cube.
Dilution's everything, man.
Like watch it change in the glass.
But I'm not going to lie. I'm just a little pour in. I can see how people sip this, though. Like, I can see this as like you get one glass with a rock and you chill at a fire. I can see how people get down on just some tequila all night.
It's not like your clear sipping moonshine, your corn whiskey.
No, that can be pungent. It stings the nostrils, as they say.
And also, it's a proof thing, too. Like, a lot of tequilas are 80 proof. I mean, I know that they're kind of creeping up lately, but I think that's part of the nature of bourbon influence. But like Tequila Ocho, this is 48%.
Yeah, I mean, 96.
So yeah, the El Tesoro here, which is finished in Basil Hayden toast barrels, is 40%.
It's just so crazy, the influence back and forth.
Yeah, just like nosing the two. You're like, oh, boom, boom, boom. Research and development. I mean, I set, what was it, Friday night, Saturday night? One night over the weekend. I had 2 pours of Tequila Ocho and El Tesoro and just sat there and kind of nosed them and did what I did with whiskey. And my notes were not as pronounced, like 10 tasting notes you would get with bourbon. But it was like, well, I kind of like this one because it's brighter, fresher, and then this other one.
Yeah.
More vanilla, more bourbon influence, even though I think it was probably finished a little bit less. It was the El Tesoro that had more like vanilla. The Tequila Ocho is just like bright fruit.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting about that is, right, like you got to go to square one. Like you're just going to go with what you like, right? Your tasting notes are not going to be developed. You don't have a palate for tequila. And I think that's what's cool is like this allows us to have a conversation that we're not super educated in, but at least to think about a little bit differently.
We can sound like fools back on episode 10.
I would argue we've sounded like fools up until about episode 100, but that's, tomato.
Just it's all a degree.
Degree of fools. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's all about trial and error. Have fun with it, enjoy it, experience it. And so however you celebrate Cinco de Mayo, whether it is with an American whiskey finished in tequila barrels, whether it's a tequila that pronounces the American whiskey barrel that it's in, or just something Blanco right off the still, or a margarita, a Paloma, whatever it may be, may you enjoy this Monday. I'm going to have fajitas. It's just a no-brainer. Like that's what I'm going to have. I'm going to make me up a margarita, and I'm going probably a Paloma, the actual drink of Mexico. And I'm going to enjoy my Monday evening as I listen to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. I mean, Scott, does that sound like a great day or what?
Cap it off.
Cap it off. Just right in the sweet spot. About 7:00, you can find me just right in the zone.
It's like, hey, Alexa, play Bourbon Lens Podcast on Spotify. That's the trick.
That's there it is. As you sit out back and just watch the sun go down. Well, the sun won't go down about 9:00, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It'll be working its way.
For sure. Well, Scott, great catching up with you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. Have a great day, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.